Hello everyone, this is Training Battalion Chief Brandon Garcia. During our recent work on improving how we fight attic fires, we talked extensively on ways that we can improve our third incident priority, property conservation. Loss control is not only important for providing a high level of customer service to our community, but it also plays a key role in fire investigation for determining cause and origin. Our PFA fire investigators have stated that in the recent years, operations have done a great job at stopping fire operations at the ideal time to allow the investigators to get inside to begin their work. Like everything else we do, there are always areas that we can improve upon. In this video, we'll be discussing how we can look for suspected fire behind walls and ceilings using some pictures taken from a recent PFA fire, followed by some clips from a video discussing evidence preservation during fire attack and salvage and overhaul. This video has a joint effort of several federal agencies. It has been edited to highlight the points that relate to us here at PFA. Let's begin by discussing how we look for fires in void spaces in walls, floors, and ceilings. This is the room or origin of a recent fire that we had. You can see in the photo that it was extremely hot in this room and all the sheetrock was severely compromised due to the massive amount of heat. It is important to know that sheetrock is an incredible fire break and fire will not pass through it by means of conduction. The only way that fire will pass through sheetrock is if there has been a breach in the physical structure integrity of the material. Fire can only spread between spaces by means of ventilation path. So we need to use this knowledge when deciding where to look for extension. Thermal imaging cameras are great tools, but they're only telling us surface temperatures and that can lead us astray depending on the situation. This is a picture of the ceiling in the room of origin. The ceiling sheetrock in this room had dropped and exposed all the joist members. Remember how hot it got in this room? And the temperature at the ceiling will always be the highest. Notice though, however, there is no charring to the bottom chords of the roof joists. The only area that we begin to see fire extension past the sheetrock is the area around the ceiling light fixture. This is because there are small gaps between the sheetrock and the can of the fixture. These are the areas that need to be inspected first when we suspect fire might have passed from one space into another. Take a look at this picture of the wall light switch. Again, we can see high heat on the sheetrock that is still present, but not charring behind it where the sheetrock has been removed. If we take a look at the light switch on the wall, we see some smoke staining, but not charring. The process of extension was beginning to occur here prior to extinguishment, but did not progress that far. These next few pictures depict what is typically done to look for fire extension. These are random holes in the sheetrock and behind each of them is a clean material. Knowing what we know, we can already determine that before ever making the hole, instead, think about what the fire needs to extend and start your efforts in those areas using a methodical approach instead of a random action. When we are engaged in these types of operations during a fire scene, they are typically done during a stage of the fire where we have time. Use that time to process your thoughts and approach your investigation as a professional. I hope that you find this information valuable and you can apply it on your next fire. Enjoy the following video clips as they will expand on ways to improve our salvage and overhaul efforts to assist with cause and origin determination.
There are more things now than ignitable liquids left at scenes by people who set fires. There are transfers, whether it's hair, whether it's blood.
Now, you can leave that wall up there and we can see the patterns on when we come in. You're not worried about that rekindle because you can see with the thermal imaging camera that wall's fine.
And now that science has embraced the fire service and the investigative end of what we do, it's been nothing but a win-win because groups like NIST and other groups from around the country have come in and said, this is what happened here, and this is why these firefighters got themselves caught where they got themselves caught. Ventilation, this was wrong, or this was right. Thank goodness they did it this way.
If we bypass somebody in initial search, We're doing secondary search. If that individual's still alive, we're evacuating that individual right away. If that person is already deceased, EMS will be called in and the victim will be left there. And so you don't want to disturb evidence because at that point it's a crime scene because there's a dead individual there.
If there's any chance for survival, the companies are going to try to remove that body and they're going to make every effort to resuscitate. But if this is after the fact, we know it's going to be a recovery. I ask that we try to keep everybody away from that room as possible. The least amount of people that we have coming in and out of that scene or that area, the better, because we're going to need to know who all was in that room. And try to cordon that area off so we could get the best possible documentation of the position of the body, of the clothing. If we need to take samples from the area, take samples off the body. Documentation of that room is going to be key.
Overzealous overhaul is poison, is absolute poison to the fire investigator.
It's called spoliation of evidence, which in essence means spoiling the evidence so that people who want to look at the evidence later to find out if it was responsible for the fire have an opportunity to conduct testing. For instance, a fire that starts in a dryer or a toaster or some other artifact that's in the building, you want to do as much as possible to keep that artifact preserved so that everybody has an opportunity to test the item to see if it really did cause the fire.
While at present there has been no case finding any government agent responsible for spoliation on the scene, it certainly is coming, and there's a lot of pressure to hold investigators, firefighters, and other personnel of the government who are on fire scenes responsible for the damage they cause to scenes and the damage they cause to both civil and criminal litigation because of the spoliation.
You can see here, by these guys not having moved this couch outside or breaking it in half or turning it upside down, there is some valuable evidence left right here. These newspapers were part of the original area of origin, which is right here on this particular couch. The hose streams, the hose wash, nothing overzealous. They knew they had a void there because of the outlet. It was cleared out so that they could see that fire had not advanced through the sheetrock along the duct, up the outlet space, and traveled to perhaps another floor. They left the chairs, everything intact. It would not be uncommon in some areas of the country to come in and find this sheetrock completely removed. Nothing but stud walls. The furniture would all be outside. And when the floor has been hosed down and drowned in water, the protected areas, the markings from the undersides of these pieces of furniture are then difficult to normally aid you in reconstruction. These firefighters who fought this fire did a tremendous job, left glass intact, left furnishings that were in the room intact, even though they had been badly destroyed. A brief conversation with this crew, and the fire investigator was in really good investigative stead to start taking care of and figuring out this fire.
We usually try to do a report at what we saw. Definitely saying that the door was already open for us would have been something we would have noted on that, plus what initially we saw when we saw the fire and how it reacted, what we moved back, and what type of overhaul we did to the building would have been something on the report for the investigator.
Did I force that door? Did I throw out the contents of the second bedroom? Did I do a primary of the first floor? And just make note, because there may be somebody coming up, a fire investigator, asking you later on that day, asking you next duty day.
The more serious the case, the longer it takes. You know, if you've got a simple fire to a building where nobody's hurt, it might go to trial in 6 months or a year. If you've got deaths or injuries, or you've got a capital case, it could be up to 5 or 6 years down the road.
Now, you wish you took 5 minutes to just jot down something as small as a window was open, or a door was open, or we had to cut through this, or we encountered furniture put in front of the front door.
Well, typically the first responder's testimony would be very short and brief. We can bring them in, 15, 20 minutes of testimony explaining what observations they made on the scene. They're typically the types of things such as their initial response, their initial entry, and it provides us with a well-rounded view of the fire scene that is very valuable in the prosecution of a case and may be very valuable in a civil suit if they're looking at where a particular object is, and this is the firefighter that entered the location and found the object.
So if we get in the habit of making these notes and putting it in the narratives, including it in the fire report by the lieutenant, the incident commander, just being responsible for what your company did and the individuals in your company, that helps considerably.
If they're in a situation where they're testifying at a criminal trial, they can expect that the defense lawyer is going to ask them a great deal of questions about origin and cause of the fire. And typically, it's my position that they're not responsible for cause and origin. They're not trained to do cause and origin. Their role in the fire is to put out the fire, and they just happen to make observations that are relevant to the origin and cause of that fire.
You can clearly see the burn patterns, heat patterns, going up, going out, ventilation patterns with the window. All that is visible by them just leaving this wall intact. Your electric, you have conduit here, your overheads, they're all still somewhat intact. A number of times, those are going to be outside. Lots of times, they end up outside. If the fire investigator doesn't get there soon, you may have scrappers that come and grab these lights, grab this, and now you got nothing. So now, everything is still left here. In the event you have to have an electrical engineer come out, the electrical engineer is going to be able to look at these. They're going to be able to collect these very easily for any type of lab analysis. You got your drop ceiling. A number of these things are still intact here. You can actually look at the heat patterns on some of the beams here. And then you also know any possible what may be confused as secondary fires could be things dropping from the ceiling that you're very cognizant of because these guys have not ripped down everything. You know exactly what's up here. You know where the ductwork is. Sometimes you have issues with ventilation because you have returns in the area. This ductwork right here, it's not all on the ground. So I have a pretty good idea as to which way this ductwork was running in the event we have a possibility of it impacting the fire.
The whole scene itself, in my opinion, is evidence. And to just be cognizant that when you're in that house, you are in a potential crime scene. There's evidentiary data in the entire room.